I think if I hear you call me Becky one more time, six-pack, I'm gonna pop your tops. All six of them.
Who are you?
Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. This is another paid request, this time from Joseph. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos or commentaries or topics or lists or reviews, re-reviews, whatever, feel free to send them either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And Joseph, if you're watching, I apologize. This is a little bit because I do have the film on DVD, but sadly this was brand new. Someone actually sent this to me long ago. I just never had time or opportunity to watch it. I popped it in, but the movie didn't work. So I tried to fiddle it. It looks clean. It's brand new. It was like took the covering off, and there's no scratches or anything, but it did not work. Like, it would work for a little bit, then it would freeze. I tried to skip ahead, it wouldn't do it, so then I had to find it online to watch, and I had to find make sure it's the right one. There's a couple movies with similar titles. Now, I was able to watch the featurette. There's a new, at this point new, John Carpenter, about 6 minutes, where he talks about how he made the film, what got him into it. And yes, this is a John Carpenter film. It's the John Carpenter film no one mentions, as part of the Twisted Terror collection from Warner Brothers. This is a made-for-TV movie that came out in 1978. The way this came about was John Carpenter had made... And by the way, John Carpenter is my favorite director. Number one. Favorite director. I love John Carpenter's The Thing. I love Assault on Precinct 13. I love Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, They Live. Just a great series of movies. His direction, him and Dean Cundey, use of the widescreen format, the score, at least most of his films he did the music for, fantastic. Or even... usually when other people do the score, they still have that John Carpenter vibe to it. Just sometimes he'll work with Alan Howard. Sometimes he'll have people like... even Starman, who another person did the score. Great, beautiful movie, beautiful score. Starman. Again, John Carpenter didn't do the music for that. But I mean, I'm going off tangent anyway. I love John Carpenter. Now, the way this came about, like I was saying... he made a couple films, Dark Star, Assault on Precinct 13. Sadly, they didn't do a whole lot, so he was writing scripts. And some of those scripts would get made. I think one of them, at least eventually, was Black Moon Rising, with Tommy Lee Jones and Linda Hamilton. There are other movies too, including this one. In fact, NBC said, well, you know what, you wrote this. Do you want to direct it? Okay. And he had like 10 days to make this film. 10 days. And it was a union gig, so he couldn't do a whole lot, and because of the short amount of running time, because it was running time as in the short amount of days he could shoot, there's not a lot of locations, so mostly it's in an apartment, maybe a few other places outside and such. Very limited budget, limitations of a TV movie, what you can and especially can't do. Because it was the union and all that, he was not able to do certain things like the music. He was not able to do the music, which is a detriment. Harry's... Oh, that's ironic. Sukman. Sukman. So, Suckman. Harry Suckman did the score, which is kind of appropriate because the score kind of sucks. Maybe suck is a strong word. It's very much a TV movie, like episode of TV tone to the score. Again, if you're expecting anything to even remotely think of John Carpenter, music-wise, it's not that. I do wish it had that. I think it would have helped tremendously in a lot of the suspenseful sequences, especially the finale. The score, I thought, was one of the glaring crap elements on it. I would say, honestly, I don't like the score. I think it's shit. If you liked it, that's cool. I think the score is shit. Maybe it'll work if it was like in a Colch at the Night Stalker or something, but, you know, not here. Now, the sub of the film is Lauren Hutton, who does a good job. I haven't seen a lot of her work, but Lauren Hutton is pretty good in the role of Lee Michaels. She just moved to LA. She got this job. Someone who works with her at the job is Adrienne Barbeau. First time working with John Carpenter. They would get married a bit later, and then would use Adrienne Barbeau in The Fog and Escape from New York. Pretty much, Lauren Hutton moves into this high-rise apartment building, and she keeps getting these phone calls, weird phone calls, and things keep going wonky in her apartment. The lights, things are opening. She keeps getting stalked, but the cops won't do anything. The one cop, he's not in the film too much, but it's Charles Cyphers, who was the sheriff in Halloween. And this came out probably a month after Halloween. I just feel like NBC had this. They went, hey, Halloween, people are talking about this. Oh, we have this guy, John Carpenter. We have a movie from him. Release that. Because then Halloween was October 78. They released this on TV November of 1978. And you could tell Carpenter was trying to do a little bit of a Hitchcock feel to it. Maybe a little bit of Rear Window. Like, there's some decent technical notes where, like, you've seen through the telescope as the bad guys look at Laura Hutton. There are times where there's push-ins or pull-outs. As much as you could do in 10 days, it's not too shabby on a technical note. And Laura Hutton actually liked her performance. Like, early on, she comes into her apartment and she's like, she doesn't know if someone's in there, and she's going, hey, Mr. Burglar, are you here? You should know I studied with Bruce Lee. I studied with him before he died. Like, that kind of endeared me to her character, and I thought she did a good job. And her frustration of not being able to get any help because the cops are like, well, what do we do? I mean, what can we charge him for? And I'm like, stalking. Like, that's not, maybe, was that not a law or something in the 70s? Like, harassment? You can't, it seemed like that's something that cops could do, that you could harassment, stalking, things of that nature. Maybe that was something not on cops, not in the law books in 78. I don't know. Someone who's into that, who's much more knowledgeable, you can let me know. But it was weird when the cops said, well, what are we supposed to charge him for? He gave you this, free vacation brochure. I'm like, well, yeah. Harassment and stalking, but I don't know, maybe, whatever. So, the movie's a bit dull. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite Carpenter films. It was okay. It's an okay movie. This is not a film I would see myself rewatch a lot. I know I keep holding it, but because, like I said, knowing the limitations of the TV budget they had, and Lauren Hutton's performance I enjoyed. She had a bit of her... She wasn't a weakling. She had a bit of attitude, but she wasn't bitchy or a man-hating lady like they would have for a character nowadays. If they remade this film, it'd be a girl that hates every guy, and her fucking head would be shaved one way, and be yelling at people, I don't care if your son died, fuck it. I'm about me. Like certain bitchy characters of the day. But yeah, it does try to do a slow burn where she gets more phone calls. She gets these weird presents like a telescope and a swimsuit. Her relationship with this professor. Once in a while, Adrienne Barbeau comes by, see how it's going. It just, again, a portion in the middle seems rather dull because of the limitations they had. I don't think they were able to get quite, like the score is a problem with that. You know, Carpenter, I think maybe is doing the best he can. Like there's a point that she hears noises. She goes to the laundry room near the basement of her building. She drops a knife through her grate, gets in, looks up, and sees that the guy doesn't notice her, but he's on top of the grate and he's walking by. There's a nice bit where a friend of hers is missing and the cops, oh, we got the guy, or did we get the guy? Did we get the wrong guy? And she turns on, no, she doesn't turn it on. She hears her water running and she looks to the bathroom and there's steam, and on the mirror says, no one believes you. And then the way Carpenter had it where he had the camera stay, and by opening the door, it dissipates and you see the message disappear. I thought that was actually a nice shot. Like there's some nice looking shots. And her and the professor talk about, well, how can you do this? How can this guy do all this and remain seemingly invisible? Come in and out of rooms and all that. And then you get into the finale. And spoiler alert, spoilers for the finale. Again, it's not, it does feel like an episode of a TV show. I mean, I know it's because it's a TV movie, so it's extended, especially for the 70s. So they find out it's a maintenance guy, like it's an inspector. It's a guy who inspects the buildings, monitors the buildings. So he's got all the keys, all the access to stuff. She breaks into that guy's house, finds all the surveillance shit, goes back to her house. I do like, again, I liked her character where she's like, face me, come on. I'm still scared. You'd have a good chance. What you gonna do? She helped a lot. Her performance helped watching this film quite a bit. Because the story is a story you've seen plenty of other films, stalker films. I mean, not exactly like this, but I mean, Pacific Heights, you know, plenty of films in the 90s, the thrillers, you know, after Fatal Attraction stuff, you see the white female, like, a lot of these thrillers that come out during that timeline. Again, it's not the same plot, but your Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock, things of that nature. So it's not the most original story. The beginning of When a Stranger Calls, when she keeps getting the phone call and the messages. So again, the story wasn't really probably as pulling me in as... But at the same time, this was made in 78. It wasn't made like 2008, so I can only view it as a guy who saw it in today's age, not as a guy that grew up with it or saw it before the multitude of other films afterward. It just watches, okay, the story's alright, it's there. But her performance, her strength of a character, is the strength of a woman without putting any other fucking gender, race, man, woman, anything else down. It's just, she's a strong woman, and come on, you want face beat? Come on, let's do it. The professor guy, her boyfriend's not an asshole, he's not misogynistic or any other bullshit political crap. The only time John Carpenter wanted political is like They Live. Which that's the right way of doing political stuff in your movie. Stuff in They Live, a talk on Reaganomics, rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That's how you do politics thing right in a movie, unlike today's age. But they didn't have any of that in this. But I was talking spoilers with the ending. They struggle, not too bad for what it is, where the bad guy's trying to push her off the balcony, and some nice shots where it's the real people by the balcony. She grabs a piece of glass, stabs him in the back, guy falls over. Again, you can't see much of this made for TV, so you're not going to see violence, you're not going to see any of that sort. Like I said, the music has this like big blaring trumpet sounds, or whatever the hell the instrument was. It's like, man, it would really help having a John Carpenter score the movie. I think that would help the film quite a bit. But I guess the best way to say this is kind of a training ground for Halloween. What to do, what not to do. You have someone who is making phone calls, and no, Michael Myers doesn't talk, but he still makes the phone calls, and people like Jamie Lee Curtis are hearing breathing or whatever. Stalking and chasing a woman who's going to be the final girl, like the final strong opponent to your villain, and trying to work out what you can do and not do with a budget, with limitations, with your camera. So yeah, it was an alright training ground for what would become the film he's most known for, Halloween. So yeah, I would watch, of the John Carpenter's filmography, the ones I only really disliked was Dark Star, I wasn't a fan of. I don't like The Ward. I don't like The Ward. Like I said, I don't like Dark Star. Memoirs of Invisible Man, pretty iffy on that one. Because again, you go like Soul in Precinct 13, love. Halloween, it's a classic. Love The Fog, one of my favorite ghost story films. Steve from New York, great movie. Call Me Steve. The Thing, my favorite Carpenter film. Big Trouble in Little China, my second favorite Carpenter film. Starman showed that he can do more than just horror or even action. He could do a love story. That I think it's a more heartwarming movie than E.T. in my opinion. Starman is great. They Live, good action sci-fi movie. Prince of Darkness, pretty damn decent horror movie. I always liked Prince of Darkness. Christine, not a bad film. Not a bad film at all. It's not one of my favorites, but I like Christine. Even In the Mouth of Madness, really enjoy that film. Escape from L.A., I like it. Yeah, the effects are dated, but I actually think that's a fun sequel. For what it is. I mean, yeah, in retrospect, it does do the same what the first film did, and you wish for more variety, differences, but there's still a lot of fun to be had, and Kurt Russell's still having a ball playing Snake Plissken. Village of the Damned I like. In particular, Christopher Reeve's performance I rather enjoyed in that. And that's a film that has one of John Carpenter's more underrated scores. Let's see. In the Mouth of Madness. I like Ghosts of Mars. I know, but I think it's a fun movie. I think it's not in my top 5 favorite Carpenter films, but I do like Ghosts of Mars for what it is. Remember, I swear there's something I'm missing. Even, I mean, that's a pretty, not too bad, track record. Vampires. James Woods. One of my favorite James Woods roles. I would say my top 5 favorite vampire films. Like Fright Night would be and Fright Night, From Dusk Till Dawn, they fight for the number 1, number 2 spot. Lost Boys. Yeah, I'll put Vampires in top 5. Because James Woods is badass in that movie. Yeah, I don't like The Ward. But he hasn't directed a lot. A few episodes of Masters of Horror, which I was, not a big Masters of Horror fan of that show. Just didn't get me. Sorry, it just wasn't for me. But he hasn't done a lot of movies, and sadly in this day and age, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because you see how there are directors that try to push more movies out, and they weren't really the best, and yeah, I don't like The Ward, and I would love to have seen him do Dead Space, but because he's a video game fan. Sorry, I'm going off tangent. I'll get back to, I apologize, Joseph, but something's watching over me as I show the DVD one more time. I believe this does have a Blu-ray, I believe. Actually, don't quote me on it. For some reason, I believe there's a Blu-ray because I remember, I thought there was a review that said this John Carpenter interview was not on the Blu-ray. I could be wrong, though. So, if I'm wrong, oh well. Not too bad trying to build up suspense. Lauren Hutton does a really good job as the lead. I think she's the best part of it. Adrienne Barbeau, nice to see her in an early role. Again, doesn't have a whole lot to do, but nice preamble before The Fog and Creep Show, which she was in, among others. Swamp Thing. Like I said, there's some nice pieces of dialogue Carpenter wrote for Lauren Hutton. The guy who plays the professor, he wasn't too bad. David Birney, he was fine. And listen, it's a movie it's fine. It's alright. It's okay. There's not a whole lot to get mad about. It's just there are points that got kind of dull, and it's too bad that there were limitations of the budget, that maybe to build a bit of the scope more, to be able to do more with angles or camera techniques, especially in the finale of the film. Maybe with a bigger budget, you could have done a bit more in the suspense sequences. And like I said, the score, rather bad. I think people may say it's okay, mediocre. I call it bad score that just, if anything tells you it's a made-for-TV, it's going to be the music. So, that's disappointing. I mean, for a John Carpenter film, but again, this was a union gig, so it wasn't really his fault. He just wasn't allowed to do it. At least that's from my understanding of how this worked out. But yeah, this is kind of considered the lost Carpenter film, because it's the one no one talks about. I could kind of see why no one really brings it up, because there's nothing that remarkable compared to the Carpenter's other films. The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China. But, not bad. It's not bad. I mean, I would watch this any day over The Ward, which I think is his worst film. Sadly, that was his last film. But, again, I would still put on the lower totem pole of Carpenter movies. But, I mean, the fact that the lower totem pole, think about it. if I'm saying like top 5 worst Carpenter films, again, there's only like 2 or 3 I dislike. The War, Dark Star, maybe Memoirs of Invisible Man. Maybe this was fit on there and this is an okay movie. Again, John Carpenter has a really good track record, in my opinion, when you look at his filmography. Not a lot of directors have that, and I think that's one of the many reasons that made him my favorite director. You just look at his filmography, he's like, wow, a lot of these I like, and if you do a marathon, you're in pretty good hands for most of it. And Memoirs of Invisible Man, I'm not a big fan of, but it's not the worst thing ever either. To be honest, it just, I have some issues with it, but there's much worse movies than that. If I stop stuttering. So, with that said, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you guys later. Bye bye.